Thanks so much for joining us. This is another episode of Natural AF, and I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this show is for you if you like to explore all things health, spirituality, human productivity, just being your best self and solving problems. We're very solution oriented. I'm very action oriented. And this episode is a very special one. This is the coalescing of many paths. I'm coming back from my military days and someone that inspired me a long time ago and never once would have imagined that I would be speaking face to face with them, especially on such a deep level that aligns with our path that we're on now. And it's just such a great confirmation of the path that we're on and where we're doing and the mission of this show.
So if you've never listened to any of our episodes and you had to pick just one to listen to, choose this one, because I feel like this is such a beautiful blend of all the different discussions that we have. It's really takes into consideration the physical body, the mental, the mindset, the spiritual. Like we went really deep. I really didn't know where this conversation was going to go. I didn't think it was going to go where we went, but I loved every second of it. And to read Mark's story, like it's pretty incredible, but then to actually speak to him, like he's amazing. I finished this interview and I was like, Mark, you're a freaking legend. And yeah, I think it's really important at this time that we're at to have male role models like him. He's incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're talking about Mark Devine, the Navy SEAL commander. I sort of briefly tell the story about how I heard about him in the show, but I could go on forever, but I want to just share just a short little bit. But so as many of you know, if you've watched the show before, I trained for a brief period of time, but I was in the Special Forces training course called the Q course or the qualification course. I'm hanging out with these guys, my friends, and we're in a leadership course together, and we're doing a CrossFit workout. And I just discovered CrossFit, but my friend would be sweating in the corner and doing just crazy shit. He was doing the SEALFIT program. Sort of the end of the story is doing SEALFIT. I kept it up after I left the military, but I injured my shoulder doing that, just overuse, overtraining. But what was interesting is just the fact that a shoulder injury from the program that Mark started led to me making a remedy that would then go to help Mark, who's dealing with a massive shoulder injury now. He flew off a snowmobile going 40 miles an hour and hit a tree.
Which is about 65 kilometers an hour for the Aussies. Yeah.
Yeah, serious injury. But this is just such a testament to the efficacy of the SEALFIT program for increasing athlete durability and all this stuff. But just on the spiritual path, I felt a strong gut instinct to make what I call alleviate now and to do this. It's kind of simple, but it's helping somebody that I look up to, and he's grateful for it. And it was just cool to see, to see how that story came full circle. So long story.
And so if you want to try Alleviate for yourself and you haven't already, you'll get 10% off your entire order, no matter how many times you order, to our listeners using the code NaturalAF10 at checkout. We've got that available worldwide. In Australia, we also have a skin repair lotion and deodorants available. And we are finally in the works of getting the deodorant going in the US, which is super exciting. Stay tuned for that.
Baby steps here and there. Definitely go on and check out what we have on offer. And if you live in a different country besides the US or Australia, we probably ship to your place as well. So, if you're curious about it, go check it out. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the show. This is going to be such a good one to share, especially if you've got anyone military in your life. Everybody has probably that one uncle that was like kind of out bush, or he'd go out in the woods and he hunted a lot and was really into survival stuff and tough guy stuff. And maybe he was in the military, maybe he wanted to be a SEAL or a Green Beret or something. I feel like there's one in every family. It could be wrong, but this episode, I think for those people especially, I hope that so many of them hear this and then hear the message about just the consciousness and the way that Mark lives his life, and the message that he has to share with people, to not just be some knuckle dragger, pipe hitter as we call him, but like somebody that can, kick in doors and do the shoot house stuff, but also is here for a higher purpose and is like on mission, on point with that. Like the more switched on, aware, focused, free minded, capable men that we have in this world, it's just going to take everything to a higher level.
Yeah. And this is what we're learning here. It is really all about integration. Like we talk about all these different levels of, mind, body, spirit, so to speak. And it's really about integrating them all because they don't exist separate to each other. We can't exist without all of them, and they're all intertwined. So it is about integration. And yeah, Mark just speaks to that so beautifully.
Yeah. If you liked the episode, if you got something out of it, but share this episode and come back to it. Because I'll take a page out of Robert Kiyosaki's book. We learn through repetition. And this episode for me has so much that I'm going to go back and listen to it a few times, probably a couple times throughout the year, and just remember this stuff. And it's not about knowing like, oh yeah, I know all this stuff. I'm aware of all this stuff. But if you really pay attention to what Mark is saying, there are some very big truth bombs in this that will change your life and will, decades from now, something will happen. You'll go back and be like, I learned that from Mark Divine. And it's because, again, it's somebody that has this calling, and the stuff that he found out that he's sharing with everyone else is his divine purpose. And
no pun intended.
Yeah. I didn't even address that at all in the whole show. His name is Divine.
We might have even said that somewhere at the end of the interview. I can't remember now. Maybe it was off camera. And I think you said it and I was like, no pun intended.
That's so funny.
He actually has the best surname. I'm a little bit jealous.
Yep.
But anyway, let's get into it. And I left this interview feeling so inspired and motivated. And it has actually motivated me to do something I've been putting off for a while. And if you'd like to know why, hang around for the outro at the end of this interview and I'll tell you what it is.
Let's get into the episode. Enjoy, guys. After a 20-year career as a Navy SEAL, Commander Mark Divine was hired by the U.S. Navy to create a nationwide mentorship program for the SEALs to improve recruiting standards. His program, focusing on mental toughness, emotional resilience, and intuition, was so effective that it reduced the infamous Navy SEAL training attrition rate, and is now being delivered to executives, entrepreneurs, Fortune 500 companies, and elite athletes worldwide. Mark is a founder of multiple companies, including SEALFIT and Unbeatable Mind, host of the Mark Divine Show podcast, author of 6 best-selling books, and the founder of the Mark Divine Courage Foundation, a nonprofit organization that supports and advocates for veterans with PTSD. A Zen practitioner with a PhD in global leadership, Mark Divine inspires others to unlock their full potential. Well, thanks so much and welcome to the Natural AF podcast, Mark.
And it's so great to be here. Thanks so much for your patience and getting this scheduled and dealing with my gyrations.
From two opposite ends of the world, we made it happen. But I just wanted to
excited to get you on.
I wanted to thank you personally. 1, thank you for your service. 2, for what you've done for the special operations community in particular. I first came into contact with your program through a friend of mine. I was training in the Army Special Operations in Fort Bragg, and a friend of mine was a Marine. I don't think he was full MARSOF, but he was in that realm. Was transitioning to the Army. We'd go and work out at a CrossFit gym. We'd do the CrossFit daily workout. It was like 15 minutes long, and he'd still be working out in the corner. I was like, what is he doing? And he's like, some of my friends were like, oh, he's doing the SEALFIT program. I was like, he's doing like holding weights and doing sit-ups off the GHD machine and like just going for it. And I was like, this is more my jam. That's more my speed.
Yeah.
So that was
I
back
think that was the truly first like warrior fitness program that was truly integrative, right? Where we brought in not only like hybrid functional fitness and training things that you guys need, like durability. Like one of the main reasons people fail at SEAL training is they could be great athletes. They're just not durable, right? They haven't trained their joints and their core to sustain the abuse over 9 months. So that's what we did. We just figured out what can we do to make the body super hard to break. And man, I tell you what, this accident I just had is a testament that it works, right? Strong people are harder to kill.
Yeah. I love that quote. Was that Mark Ripito, right?
That's Mark Ripito,
yeah.
Well, can you actually get into a little bit for people like me that don't have a military background? Why is the Navy SEAL program notoriously tough and it has this really high rate of SEALs dropping out?
Failure. Well, put it this way: they're all tough, but they're tough in different ways, as Zach knows.
Mm-hmm.
They're just different. Like Ranger School is a suck fest, but it's only 75 days, and you can gut through 75 days pretty easily. It's long days, lots of basically rucking around with your weight and cold, and getting lost, and
right,
sleep deprivation and whatnot. SEAL training is unique though because it's every day is punishing, like absolutely punishing, and it's a performance based program. So from the moment you step in, every time you do an evolution, you have to beat your prior score.
Oh, wow.
And they test them. So you do a time, so you start out with a 2-mile time run, then 3, then 4, and then 5-mile time run. And you got to beat your time every time. And then you have time swims, right? First starts at a half mile, then a mile, then 2 miles, and then you do a 6-mile. You got to beat your time. Oh, of course, got to beat your time. And so that goes on for 6 months in BUDS, and then an extra 3 months in the SQT or SEAL qualification training.
Wow.
And as you know, from performance psychology and just training in general, generally, you go on these peaks and valleys. It's a very unique individual that can sustain increasing performance over 6 to 9 months. It takes a lot of mental power. The second thing that's unique about it, although I don't think this is so unique amongst other special ops pipeline programs, but the SEAL instructors are like masterful psychologists. Like they learn how to get under your skin. And they watch very closely what your emotional triggers are and what your childhood trauma patterns are. And they're like, they're going to find that. And they're going to squeeze that hard, right, to try to break you. Because if you're not, if you can be broken in BUDS, then you be broken in combat.
Yeah, sure.
And so a large part of the challenge is not the physical, it's actually the mental and emotional, right?
Yeah.
Then, of course, it's famous for Hell Week. Hell Week is singularly unique. I mean, Congress has tried to delete it so many times because people are worried that it's just too hard or it's not necessary. And the SEALs have wisely resisted that. And Hell Week is the ultimate simulation of combat. It's 6 days of nonstop training, 24/7, around the clock and no sleep. And it's all performance-based too. And it's brutal. In fact, our SEALFIT Kokoro camp, Zach, is modeled after Hell Week. It's modeled after the first 50 hours. And one of the reasons that our training program, so with SEALFIT, what we did was we built a program that I thought would make the operators most survivable, whatever program we're going through. And not just surviving the pipeline training, but combat, right? Long years of combat. And so a big part of that was to bring the practices, what I now call Unbeatable Mind, into the program. So breath control, mindfulness, visualization, micro task focusing, attention control, in other words. And then this ability to really refine your ego so that you truly are there for your team and your teammates. And so when these guys get through my training, part of the training is obviously doing the OPWADs like you did and your friend. Over a long period of time, we do that together at our training center in Encinitas, California. You can think of it like an American Shaolin monastery. Guys would come and live with me. I'd have like 20 or 30 spec ops candidates, some of them all over the world. Like we had a ton of Aussies come over, Canadians, Americans, not just SEAL candidates, maybe 30 or 40% were SEAL candidates. We would train from like 4:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and then sometimes around the clock. And the graduation ceremony for that 30-day program was a 50-hour nonstop, evolution. And then we spun that off later to create what we now call Kokoro, which means to merge your heart and mind into your actions. So that program, we used to have people come back after Hell Week and tell us that Kokoro was harder than Hell Week.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? And they attribute their success to Kokoro and to the SEALFIT OPWAD training. And 90% of those who trained in SEALFIT in that way through those programs make it through SEAL training. It's pretty cool.
Amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that stands up on its own. Just saying that, knowing how tough the training is. I had some friends that were in the SOC and medic course at Bragg that I was in that were SEALs, and our level of fitness in the Army, it was like playtime for them. It was just, we'd do these runs together and they'd be throwing pine cones at each other, playing games like while the rest of us are sweating out. And it was very interesting, a very unique experience working with the SEALs like that. You can see how quickly and easily they lock in on a team, kind of like a team mind, when they're doing something, a task, it's like they don't even have to say a word. They just kind of look at each other and nod, and then everyone goes and does the thing. And it's just a really unique brotherhood.
It's very hard to replicate that in any environment, right? I mean, there are some other high risk environments that have that sort of thing. I imagine like working on an oil rig or, something where the risks are very high. But the SEALs, the training that the SEALs do, I don't think there's another organization on the planet that trains as relentlessly and seriously as the SEALs do. It's nonstop, even in the combat zone, right? We're training. I'm sure the SF guys do that too, but like we absolutely love training.
Yeah, well, I like that there's that competition between the two. It's they definitely inspire each other to do as good as possible. I
think so. I actually think combat really, the war on terror was rough on both organizations, man. Yeah. We had a lot of losses. You guys had a lot of losses. But we got to work so closely together. There was a great mutual respect that when I was in the 90s, I was in through 90s to 2011, but in the early 90s, mid 90s, we didn't really work as much with our, other partners. So there was a lot of jealousy and kind of rivalry, and wasn't always friendly.
Right.
So, but now there's a great cross collaboration. It's kind of nice to see.
So let's rewind a little, Mark, because we know that you were you started in the corporate world before you joined the Navy SEAL. So what sparked the decision to actually become a SEAL?
That's such a great question. I actually write about this in my book, The Way of the SEAL, because the transformation really happened and it's the cornerstone of what I do today. Because you're right. I went to a small liberal arts school called Colgate University. Most of my peers were heading down to New York, Manhattan, to go into finance or trading. And then there was a program that was being recruited on campus by the what was then the Big 8 accounting and consulting firms. It's now down to 4. But anyways, I was one of those guys. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. My family has a family business, and it was always kind of expected that maybe I would go out and get a little experience, but I was going to come back and run the family business. That's what I was groomed for. And also, part of my origin story was I wasn't very confident. It might surprise people to hear that. I wasn't very confident. Externally, I looked great, right? I was, I did good in high school. I was, obviously an endurance athlete. It looked squared away, but because of all the kind of the abuse and the alcohol that was happening in my family, I had some self-esteem issues. And I didn't know how to study. Like I went to a public high school with 200 students in my class, and Future Farmers America, God bless them, was the biggest organization in the school. I think 4 people from my class went on to college. And I was one of them.
Oh, wow.
And so we didn't have any AP classes. Everything just came easy to me. And so when I got to Colgate University is one of the best undergraduate universities in the country. The only reason it's called a university is they have one math master's class. And so they resist the urge to become this big bloated institution. They said, we're just going to be exceptional at, cultivating world-class undergraduates. And man, they do. They pump out some amazing people. So I get into this program and I'm like, I don't have a clue how to do what they're asking me to do. Like I didn't know how to do studying the way they needed it. And I ended up with a 2.8 GPA. And so I didn't think at all I was going to get one of these jobs. But Coopers and Lybrand, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers, saw something in me. And the program was in partnership with NYU Stern School of Business. So I had to get into Stern, which was a trick. Stern let me in because of the job on academic probation, right? So it was kind of a interesting catch-22. I got into Stern, a top 10 business school, because of Coopers and Lybrand. The Coopers and Lybrand required me to go to Stern, and so the compromise was academic probation. And what's really interesting is I suddenly thrust myself in that environment, starting to go to school. I had a little bit more confidence in my academic success because I'm now graduating college. But what shifted everything for me, and to answer your question more directly, Alexa, is as an athlete, like back then, there wasn't a lot of discussion about fitness. I mean, running wasn't, such a big thing, and there was no high intensity interval training. There was Nautilus training and kind of Cybex equipment. And there was no real discussion about longevity or lifetime fitness. It was more like you kind of did it as an athletic endeavor. And when you got out, some people just kept dabbling. But like 99% of my peers and the people I saw in the professional world in New York were like pasty and fat. And they were fine with it. But yours truly, similar to where you guys are, and probably everyone listening to this podcast was like, you know what, I'm going to maintain this body for life as best I can. Like, this is lifetime fitness. I think I was a yogi in a past lifetime because I'm so attracted to that. And that's kind of the yogi path. It's like you move your body, you train your body so that you have an optimal conditions in life to evolve and grow as best as you can. And you need your body for that. And like, it's your move around vehicle. Anyways, that's a backdrop for me saying that I would train in the morning. I'd go out and run 6 miles, come back, do my stretching. And then I would train at lunch, at the gym. I would like grab whatever equipment I could and I'd like pee on it like a dog so no one could enter my circle of woe. Right? And then I'd just like a Tasmanian devil, I'd go around it and go back to the office just sweating for the next hour. It's kind of like an early days of CrossFit workout.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting because they would let us off. Cooper's let us off our audit job at like 5. And we had to be down at the World Trade Center where NYU Stern was back at the time at 7:30 for our night class. And so I looked at that 2.5-hour window as another training block. All my peers would go home and have dinner and, do some studying. I was like, no, I'm going to do some training. But what to do was the question. While I was pondering that over a couple-day period, I was walking home and I walked I was on 22nd Street in Manhattan, 22nd and Broadway. And I'm walking down 23rd Street and I start hearing these screams coming from the second floor building right above me. And they weren't like screams of horror. They were just like people getting busy. You know what I mean? And I look up and I'm I know. That's pretty funny. You could take that in a couple different ways.
Yeah, it goes to
I didn't think they were having sex. It sounded a lot like a martial arts studio. And I look up, I'm standing under a flag that says World Sado Karate Headquarters. And I'm like, interesting. And I had a flashback. My freshman roommate, this guy's name was Dave Bowman. He and I shared a room, and he was he was a pest, right? He was this arrogant little guy, and he used to bug the shit out of all the people in my dorm room. And like he took these dumbbells home from the gym, and he would throw them on the floor just to piss off the girls who lived underneath us. But anyways, Dave got into Shotokan karate while at Colgate, and I was a competitive swimmer. 4 years go by, and I watched Dave transform into this like very respectful, poised, polished, ripped human being. And he was heading off to Japan to continue his karate studies and teach English. And yours truly, 4 years later, I was older. I drank a lot of beer. I chased a lot of girls. I had a degree. I swam a lot, but I didn't feel transformed. And so I was like, if the martial arts can do that for Dave, maybe it's something I need. So I went upstairs, and in the middle of the room was this grandmaster, Tadashi Nakamura. And, say that's when the student ready, the teacher appears. That's the situation. Because when I saw him, I was like, wow, there's something unique about him. Like there's something very, very different about this man. And like he was a master. He mastered his body, mind, and spirit and integrated at a level that very, very few human beings had at that time and still do. He had this lightness of spirit, this spontaneity, this playfulness, but this obviously deadly seriousness. Like this guy was creator of his own style, had 300,000 students around the world. And I remember watching him in Madison Square Garden. He had these 5 blocks of ice stacked up on each other. And standing in front of him, he just looks at him and he just goes, yeah. Hits it with his forehead and they all just go, shatter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's focused energy projection. His teacher was a guy named Masayama, who was famous for cutting the horn of a charging bull with his hand, like karate chopping him.
Oh my God. I think I've heard that story. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So these were getting involved in these stories and this kind of whole Japanese kind of martial culture when I was 21 was extraordinary. And then, of course, we did a little bit of meditating before and after each class. And then, of course, it's a somatic practice. So there's moving meditation, there's breath work, there's all the positive energy and the teamwork. All of this is brand new to me. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm starting to grow really fast. And then one Thursday night, I stayed to watch the black belt class, and I was like inspired. And this is their headquarters in Manhattan. So they had like 1,000 students, right, at this particular location. It was gorgeous. After the black belt class, everyone was kind of shuffling out, and they're moving people out kind of fast. I mean, this is kind of weird. Maybe they're closing down quickly and got to get somewhere. But I saw that they had turned the lights off in one area and lit a candle, and about 10 students were bringing these little wooden benches and lining them up. And I said, what are they doing? They said, well, that's the Zen class. I said, what's Zen? And I said, well, it's hard to explain. There's a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by a guy named Suzuki. Go read that, and you'll learn more. So I got the book, and I devoured it. I understood about 0% of it. But, man, it was all talking about mental development and the mind and the states of awareness and consciousness that accrue from deep development of the mind and the process for developing the mind through these stillness practices, inner journey, right? So I asked if I could join the class, and I started studying Zen with Nakamura, and I loved it, right? I was one of the rare people that I really loved it. And I think the reason that I was successful with the meditation was because of my upbringing, and because of my upbringing was so chaotic and uncomfortable that I would spend long hours outside in the woods, in the wilderness, where it's just me in the woods, me in the wilderness, me and the animals, or me on the lake. And that's a meditation in itself, right? Steeping yourself deep in nature. And then similarly, because I was comfortable with that, competitive swimming and endurance sports were natural to me. I could, spend hours alone. And if you think about swimming, like you're doing breath control training while you're swimming, right?
Right.
You're holding your breath and releasing, you're getting into a nice pattern. And I had naturally gotten my mind into a place where I would recite a mantra while I was swimming. So I'm doing breath control and I'm reciting a mantra, and I'm doing this, for 3,000 or 4,000 meters at a time. That is also a form of meditation. So when I go and actually learn about meditation, I'm like, this is really cool. This feels familiar. But now I've got a teacher who's giving me a path and who can answer questions about some of the experiences. Well, guys, if I can, just say that nothing short of extraordinary to get into meditation in your late teens or early 20s, because your brain is still developing, and you want it to develop like really well and really fast. Start a meditation practice, because my brain just exploded, and I started to have these intense flow experiences. I started to feel that kind of the fluidity of time. Right. A lot of spec ops guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You have this, especially in combat, time gets really fluid. Any type of crisis, of course, you start to get into the contextual awareness where time is not linear anymore.
Yeah.
It's malleable. So I began to experience that. I began to experience the environment around me is like really thick, almost electrically soupy thick, which gave me the sensation that we're all connected, because we are. And I had that experience from meditation. Probably the most profound, there were a couple other profound shifts. One, the process, so Zen training starts out with concentration. Like Zen is predominantly a concentration path. And this is particularly relevant for Westerners because we're extremely distractible, right? Our technologically driven culture and social media, I didn't have all that, but still, the Western brain is trained in that linear left brain, and it wants to see what's next. It's always grasping for what's next and is pulling from the memory bank to kind of understand it and categorize it and put it in its place. And so because of that, it's popping, it's bouncing all over the place. And this leads to great anxiety and the inability to kind of even sit still, because you got to be getting things done. And it's great for getting things done and building things. Look at all the things we built. But it's not so great for relationships, and it's not so great for plumbing the depths of your soul. So concentration is to basically, now the practice that Nakamura had me do is a lot like what I teach the SEALs these days. I call it box breathing. He didn't have the holds, but he said, you're going to inhale slowly to like a 5 count. And then you're going to exhale slowly. And this is through the nose, deep diaphragmatic breathing. And you're going to exhale slowly, and you're going to count 1. And then you can do this again. And you're going to count 2. And you're not going to do anything. You're not going to think about anything else. Just inhale, exhale 1. Inhale, exhale 2. And then he says, when, not if, but when you notice that you're thinking about something else, bring it back to the breath. but go back to 0. Right?
Yeah.
They'll just pick up. So when you first start this practice, you're like, oh, that's easy. And you get to 10 and you're like, that's easy. But the whole time you're thinking.
Right.
You say, well, that's not it. Right. And so after a few months, you might be able to actually get to 3 or 4 without thinking of anything else. So this trains attention control. You're able to keep bringing your attention back to the breath, back to the breath, back to the breath. And then you're able to hold that attention for longer and longer periods of time. So it develops concentration power, which gathers up your mental energy and gives you more ability to focus for longer periods of time. Well, if that was it, then I would have been a really focused person, and I am. But what leads to the constant ability to notice that your mind has wandered, suddenly you shift your attention to the one that notices that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if your mind is wandering and you say, oh, my mind is wandering, who's the part that's saying my mind is wandering? Because otherwise, before that, you were the mind that was wandering. You were merged with your thoughts. So this practice, if you stick with it for long enough and you do it well, naturally opens up to what mindfulness is intending. And mindfulness is just intending to be the witness, the monitor of your thoughts. And this is an incredible shift for any human being, but for me to have the shift when I was 21 and 22 to where I suddenly realized that I'm not my thoughts. And then it opens up a whole new world, because then you can start asking different questions. Like, if I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? Right? Which is like the dangerous question. Right?
Yeah.
The dangerous question is going to shatter the life as you know it and lead to complete freedom. In fact, who am I? It's Ramana Maharshi's, Inquisition. The other thing is, if I'm not my thoughts, whose thoughts are they, and are they serving me? Now, that was a good one for me, because I'm looking at the whole litany of things that are in my brain every day. They say you have 60 to 100,000 thoughts a day, and 90% the same as yesterday, or 80%. Well, that was true for me too. And I'm like, well, where do those come from? I'm like, that's when I started to investigate. I'm like, oh, that's my mom. That's my dad. That's what I learned from church. That's what I learned, and they're all just ideas, but they're not necessarily my ideas. So then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. What if those aren't my ideas? What if those aren't really the thoughts that I want that are going to serve me? And I noticed, by the way, a lot of those thoughts were negative. Right?
Yeah.
The brain, especially the left Western linear brain, is 5 times as negative as it's positive. I call them fear loops. And so I had a lot of negative fear loops. And I'm like, that can't be good. And that's why I was feeling low self-esteem. I was having trouble with relationships. There was a lot of bullshit that I was telling myself. So meditation led me to this incredible capacity to observe that and to see, okay, those aren't actually my thoughts. I don't need to own those. I can let them go. I can, dissect them out of my left brain, limited thinker, and I can come up with a whole different level of thinking. Right. And so that's when I started journaling and asking, like, what would I like that to be? Who do I want to be? How do I want to live? How do I want to show up? Who am I? Now, all this is going on while my meditation practice is getting deeper and deeper. And I'm having these experiences now where, it went from trying to concentrate, effort, sometimes sweating, to like breaking through, and now finding it much easier to hold my concentration. And then having the experience of witnessing and monitoring my thoughts and this separation of being, I'm not the thinker, I'm the witness, which brings great freedom and non-reactivity. Again, that skill probably saved my life in buds. But then I would suddenly drop off into the nonlinear, into the void, where there was no experience of time whatsoever. And I couldn't tell if I was there for 30 minutes or 3 minutes or 3 seconds. And every time I would come out of one of those, come back into kind of the linear experience of being a human, I had an experience that was bringing back something with me, like some sort of knowingness, some not knowledge like we know of knowledge, where you like a model, or a theory, just a sense of something. And I kept coming back with this sense of the warrior, right? And I'm like, oh shit, I think there's something about being a warrior in me. Like maybe I'm a warrior and I don't know it. Maybe I'm supposed to be a warrior. Maybe that's who I am. So I started to play with that. like, if I'm supposed to be a warrior, am I supposed to be a warrior? And I kept getting this intuitive feeling, yes, you are a warrior. And then I'm like, okay, if I'm a warrior, then how am I supposed to be a warrior? Because I don't feel like a warrior as a CPA. I don't feel like that's how I'm going to be a warrior. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it wasn't for me,
Like that movie, The Accountant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I am the only CPA, I think, ever to go in the SEAL teams. Maybe not. I don't know. So I started to ask questions about that. Like, how am I supposed to serve as a warrior? And this whole process, took, 2 years at least. I started to gain more and more confidence that I was in the wrong profession, I was heading down the wrong path, and that I was meant to be a warrior. I was trying to figure out how that would show up. When you start to get close to the truth of yourself, synchronicity is, experience. That's when miracles start to happen. And I was walking home one night, similar to the situation of me finding Sato. I find myself standing in front of a Navy recruiting office, didn't even know it was there, and I'm staring at a recruiting poster. It doesn't say anything about the SEALs, it just says, be someone special. And I remember being struck by that. I'm like, I actually don't really feel special. But whatever those guys are doing right there, that's badass. I think that's how I'm supposed to be a warrior.
Yeah.
So the whole story of how I got into the SEALs, I went in through officer candidate schools. My recruiter tried to dissuade me. He's like, Mark, really stand a chance.
Right.
They take either 0 or 1 person a year into OCS with a direct billet to the SEALs. He goes, and by the way, SEALs back then were only like 700 people, and they're super secret. Most of us are still 700 in secret, but the cat's out of the bag, And I said, no, that's it. Nick, that's what I'm going to do. That's my path. So he's like, okay, I'll stand behind you. Anyways, one last point on this, and this is really important because I've actually given some really interesting secrets and nuggets to
definitely
manifesting whatever the hell you want in life.
Yeah.
I already had a strong physical practice. I already had a breath control practice. I had a meditation practice. And I doubled down on those, but the thing is I shifted all of that energy now toward this is in pursuit, in service of me being exceptional SEAL officer. Not like hoping I'm going to go to BUDS or hoping I'm going to complete BUDS, but, being a SEAL officer. And so every morning after my run now, of course, then I had already added meditation, which started with the breathing and then meditation. And at the end, I added a visualization. Now, this is 1987 or 88 now. Not a whole lot known about visualization in the West. My swim instructor, my swim coach at Colgate, Bob Benson, was like, let's say pioneering, but he was experimenting with visualization. And he had me visualize my 200-meter breaststroke, with a stopwatch at night. It was ridiculously hard, and I tried quitting, and he wouldn't let me quit. So I stuck with it. You imagine like a raucous fraternity house, everyone drinking around me, and I'm sitting there at the stopwatch. Like a gun would go off, and I'd jump in the water, and I'm swimming underwater, and then my breaststroke, and all around me, people drink and have a good time.
Yeah.
So anyways, it took me a long time to get to where I could actually swim the entire race in my mind uninterrupted. And whenever I would hit the pad and click the stopwatch that I had in my hand, I would get the same time within a few hundredths of a second. And ironically, it was 3 seconds faster than I had ever swum in the pool. Wow. And all that was my sophomore spring season. And it turns out that my junior fall, I had gotten into this study group to go overseas to London. And so I went, and so I didn't swim. Right? I didn't swim at all. I missed the entire season. I come back in the spring of my junior year, and I run into this guy, Mr. Mr. Benson. And he's like, Mark, some pleasantries. How was Europe and all that? And he goes, hey, we have our championship meet next weekend. Do you want to jump in the water with the team? Every bone in my body's going, nope. But of course I couldn't let him down. So I'm shaking my head. Yep. There's the codependent in me. So I find myself on the block. I haven't swum in over a year. And gun goes off. I dive in the water. I start swimming this race. And I'm getting like halfway through. And I'm like, man, I feel like I've swum this race before. And when I touch the pad, I look up. I got the time that I visualized.
Wow.
My fastest time ever by far. And 3 seconds is like, it's like a lifetime.
That's a big
swimming. So that stuck with me, just like kind of the Dave Bowman story stuck with me. It stuck with me, and I carried that. And when I got accepted to go to the SEALs, actually, no, I didn't. It was well before. When I put the package in, and I told Nick, I'm going to go for this, right? I'm going to be the one guy. Well, I remembered that what we now call sports performance visualization, practicing a thing, a skill.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what if the skill was buds, right? And not so much like doing the things, but being the man worthy of crushing it. So I wonder what effect that would have. And so Be Someone Special is also the name of their recruiting video. I had already watched it like 20 times. And so I inserted myself into that video. And after every morning meditation, I began to watch myself go through training and just crush it and be really healthy. And then watch myself graduate, all the way down to what it felt like, them pinning and trident on me, and the warmth on my face, and the respect I would get.
Mm-hmm.
I did this, and this is another one of those things. If you have faith in the power of visualization and you do it, whether it's for healing, like I'm doing it right now to heal my scapula, which is shattered in 18 pieces, it will accelerate your healing. And it will really dramatically improve your chances of success. But that 9 months, it took 9 months I practiced this every single day, just through blind faith. And all of a sudden, in about a 3-day period, I felt this shift. And the only way I can kind of describe that shift, it was really an internal state or feeling this, or one of those, like I talked about, a knowingness. And the knowingness went from kind of like, I'm pretty sure, but I really hope that I get that SEAL contract. But I'm not 100% certain because it's so, like statistically, it probably would have had a better chance to be an astronaut. To suddenly, I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm getting that. And I'm going to be a SEAL. And literally a few days later, Nick, the recruiter, called and said, holy shit, Mark, congratulations. You were right. You got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I know. He goes, what do you mean you know? He says, I know. I felt it. He goes, man, you're going to make a great SEAL. You guys are weird.
You guys are weird. I like that.
Yeah.
Wow. What a story. What an incredible story. And what you said just now about like visualization and I guess manifestation really resonates for me because when I first read Joe Dispenza's book,
it's amazing.
Yeah, I realized that I had done that so often throughout my life and naturally, because a lot of the things I really, really desired and wanted to move towards in my life, I just would manifest them. I didn't know that was manifesting at the time. And I realized that's what it was. It's the visualization. And when you're then in that visualization, like the feeling of like already having it. And like for me,
right? To have the energetic, emotional feeling. It's a whole body experience.
Yeah.
That's why it doesn't work for most people because they're stuck in their head. And especially for guys, they're too distractible. They won't put the time in. But they're stuck, they're living from here up, their head up, their chin up.
Yeah.
So this visualization has to come from your heart. Like you have to really see it truly and feel it truly. I say you got to see it, say it, feel it, and believe it. And then it comes true. I think what's happening here, it's one of those areas that not many people really know how to explain it. But I have an explanation. So the way the brain works is thoughts are either spontaneous, like happening all the time, spontaneous thoughts. Like right now, this is spontaneous. I'm not pulling from memory, it's just spontaneous because I've trained my mind to be very present. And they can be pulled from consciousness because everything is consciousness and we are an instantiation of consciousness, like an address in consciousness. And then and thoughts can be generative, meaning like, let me think about that. Oh yeah, that. Or someone says something to me, I'm thinking about it, I say something back, they think about it, and it's back and forth. So that's discursive thought.
Right.
So you have spontaneous thought, you have generative thought, and you have discursive thought. Most people, the default mode, they call the default mode network, is it's discursive and generative and subconscious pattern triggered thinking.
Right.
Right. Which is where you get the constant churning of the same thoughts day after day after day.
Mm.
And so when it comes to discursive and generative or even the subconscious, it's all pulling from memory. Right. So essentially that's how the mind works. It pulls from memory. It takes that memory and relates it to what you're experiencing. And if it's relatable, then it's good and you can classify it. If it's something that's not relatable, then generally it's discarded and maybe even not remembered or not stored even. This is why everyone keeps repeating the same patterns and their world shows up in the same way every day, because they're just basically taking what happened in the past, they're accepting it as reality, and they're projecting it into the future. And so in that present moment, their future possibility is contaminated with their past memories. That makes sense?
Yeah.
They're not operating with a blank slate. That's why, the practice of meditation is so powerful, because in that present moment, you have the opportunity for anything to happen, for any thought, for any creativity. But because our minds are trained to always constantly be filling that silence up with memories and then projecting into the future, then we are constantly recreating what we have in the past. So where am I going with this? What if through visualization, you're planting a new memory? Now, the visualization, as soon as you have it, it's in your past. So it becomes a memory. And then every day you add energy to that visualization. And it's just like, I liken it to like, if you take a ball of string and you just keep rolling around. What if a thought, like a visualization, one day it's not very strong, and you visualize the next day and you visualize it really well, and then all of a sudden the energy gets stronger, and the next day, and so this ball of string is getting thicker and thicker and thicker. In fact, the Tibetan monks have a practice where they collectively visualize the same thing, and they call it a dakini. And a dakini is something that the energy gets so strong, and its purpose is like pure, to go out and do good in the world. Then the dakini, they set the dakini free to go do its work. So you're creating a dakini of your future, practicing your future, which becomes a memory that then you draw on that positive memory of your future, right? And now in your present moment, you're infusing your present moment with that future potential, as opposed to poisoning it with the past.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can see what you're saying about time not being linear. This kind of lends to that, where you're taking something that you're looking forward in the future, but it's acting as if it's already happened, or
That's
if it's
right.
already present reality or past reality. And then you're moving forward from that position
That's
of
right.
knowing or having accomplished that or whatever.
That's right. And the more you practice, then the stronger that image becomes. It's like a pull. It creates this gravitational pull until it's impossible for it not to come true.
Yeah,
It's a powerful
100%.
practice. So that's what happened to me. And I knew I was going to be a SEAL. And then it happened. I remember November of 1989, I got my MBA, literally finished and got my certificate in the mail. I didn't go to the graduation ceremony because I missed it. I got my certified public accountancy certificate, again, in the mail. It took me 4 times to pass. Finally got it. I'm a CPA, MBA, yay. Passed my first degree showdown black belt test with Nakamura, all in November 1989. And I started Officer Candidate School on December 4th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Love it.
Well, that accountant training and business training is definitely coming in handy with all the businesses you've started and stuff too, but it's just down the track.
Ish. I mean, think about it. You guys have a business. Like, how valuable would being a CPA be? Not really. And how valuable would a MBA received in 1989 when, like industrial accounting,
right.
big finances, all big corporate Fortune 500 type stuff that we did.
Yeah.
There was no entrepreneurship. There was no leadership, nothing. So it was helpful in the sense that when I launched my first business, which was the Coronado Brewing Company, I had no trouble raising money because I was MBA, CPA, Navy SEAL.
Right.
Some people would look at the other Navy SEAL, lieutenant at the time, MBA, CPA. So the credentialing really helped for sure.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, being a Navy SEAL was probably the most valuable thing for entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurs, you got to be scrappy. I mean, you got to,
Yeah.
there's certain things you got to not ask permission for, but beg forgiveness, right? And you got to make do with a really limited budget, and you got to be like MacGyver, and, use rigorous tape and bubblegum sometimes to hold things together. So SEALs was a good training ground to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I was going to say entrepreneurship definitely isn't for the faint-hearted, and either is being a SEAL. So, yeah.
The one area where it didn't serve me well is in the SEALs and any special operations. That's like the team bond is unassailable and unquestionable. Right?
Yeah.
If you're on the team, and if you do anything to breach the team, we said you have to earn your trident every day, not just at Buds, but every day. And if you don't show up as locked and loaded and supportive of your team and the mission, then you don't last very long. And so it developed this kind of attitude in me that I was going to find that same level of team ability in the civilian world. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
It was not that way. And man, I had a really bad partnership in my first business that just blew up. And because I had a lot of assumptions about how the team would operate, they weren't accurate for that particular domain.
Yeah. How does that, I'm trying to figure out how to parse this question in the spiritual realm, and we live in near Byron Bay, and it's kind of, for us, we've got this reputation. We're kind of on the outside. It seems very soft and feminine. And whenever someone talks about the mind, it's usually in like regards to distancing yourself from it. Like, oh, that's the mind. That's like the enemy almost. Where what you've done, what you're showing here is that the mind is actually a very, very important tool. It needs to be trained. And then that is like this directing point for whatever you want to do,
right,
or accomplish or be. It's like it starts here. And I remember that. I was like, be that in the mind first, and then do, and then you'll have whatever.
Yeah. That's why I say the first lesson of my Unbeatable Mind course is win in the mind first, then step foot in the battlefield. Yeah. I got that from the Sun Tzu quote, right? It says, victorious warriors win in their mind first and then go to war. Everyone else goes to war hoping to win.
Yeah.
Look, if you're not training your mind, someone's training it for you. The results will speak for itself. Your mind, the moment you're born, even in utero, your mind is being trained. It's being conditioned. It's being shaped. It's being basically words are just the shape of a thought. It's a form. So thoughts are form. So the mind and the mind actually generates the body too. So it's not like you have a mind and a body. You have a body-mind. I mean, this is why Joe Dispenza's work was so powerful, because he showed that the mind and the body are one thing. And so if you want a healthy body, have a healthy mind. And if you want to have a healthy mind, you got to have a healthy body. So they go hand in glove, right? The yin and the yang. I think for me, I did the Zen, and then I got really into yoga. And I got over 1,000 hours of teacher trainings, some really incredible teachers, and I've just read everything I can get my hands on. Same thing with Tibetan Buddhism, and I've practiced Tai Chi and Qigong for many years, and I've just done a lot of these really incredible Eastern practices, which have such rich traditions, and they're so powerful, but they're really kind of just fringy still here in the West. Now, yoga has really taken root, but it's lost its essence, right? Because of, kind of Lululemon and the core power yoga craze, right? I think it's just hot yoga or stretchy bendy,
Yeah.
At the turn of the century, it wasn't that. I mean, Paramahansa Yogananda, author of founder of Self-Realization Fellowship, author of Autobiography of Yogi, was very famous in the 1920s and used to fill up theaters and talk about true yoga, what it really was, which is the unification of body, mind, and spirit, or reintegration or wholeness. Yoga means to yoke. Anyway, so where I'm going with this is, it all started to come together with me with that SEALFIT program that we were talking about when we started. When I had these guys with me for 30 days, I really was thinking, like, this is multidimensional training. The physical part came pretty easy to me. I had CrossFit to draw from. I had Ripetone, all the strength training. I just ripped through as many certifications as I could. I used to help Glassman and Dave Castro from CrossFit run certifications for the SEALs. I mean, I got really good. We had a CrossFit gym. And so I built my own functional fitness training program fairly quickly. And I codified it in the book, 8 Weeks of SEALFIT, which became a national bestseller. But then, I had a lot of time with these guys. And we were training 12 to 15 hours a day. And we're not going to work out that whole time. And we did a lot. We did a lot of physical training. But in between, we did a lot of mental training, a lot of team and work and leadership development. And I remember in the very first one of these that I ran, I was using Sanskrit words to talk about breath work, pranayama, and, these different, and I was using the Sanskrit words to talk about yoga poses. And the guys were literally rolling their eyes at me. Some of them were like snickering. A couple of them, had something to do, like, important phone call. And I found out later that they thought it was religion, and they couldn't step into, that studio because Christian religion wouldn't allow it. I was like, no. So I was like, oh man, they completely misunderstand what's going on here. So I got to take a different approach. So I called it taking the foo out of the kung fu. And I just took everything that I knew would work, and I dumbed it down, simplified it, codified it as, like, I have this one program called Kokoro Yoga, but I didn't call it that to these guys. I called it integrated movement. And I developed all these really cool movement pattern sequences, anywhere from just a few minutes up to an hour and a half. Some of our yoga practices have kettlebells in them.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's
cool.
They're backbreaking, just awesome practices. A lot of breath work, a lot of the visualization, all of it integrated in these practices. And I started teaching that, but I didn't call it yoga. I called it, like, this one's the hip mobility drill.
Right.
This one's the shoulder mobility drill. This one is warrior practice number 1. And this is warrior practice number 2. And they loved it. And then, of course, we have lectures on the science of breath control, why it works, and what's it doing to your nervous system, how it's keeping you in control in combat, and why, when you stop doing the box breathing, this is something that finally got proven by science. Like, I taught that we're going to breathe in a pattern of 5 count in, 5 count hold, 5 count out, 5 count hold. And that, I explained as best I could back then in the mid 2000s, why this was so effective at keeping you calm and clear-headed in combat or in any stressful situation, because you're at deep diaphragmatic breathing, you're getting more oxygen in, you're massaging your vagus nerve, and you're stimulating your mind a little bit because of the not naughty system, I didn't use that, but the energy systems. Mm-hmm. That one they didn't really believe me on, but I knew it was true. And so you're activating that parasympathetic rest and digest, which keeps you calm, and so you're going to be in a state of real balance. But most importantly, I would say, is this box breathing practice is for doing when you're in a seated position, like a meditation or a calm. You're not going to do it in combat, but you will have trained yourself to diaphragmatically breathe slow and deep to a 5 count in and a 5 count out, because that's what you've been practicing every single day. Yeah. And we call that tactical breathing. You might remember that. We call it tactical breathing now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so tactical breathing is 5 count in, 5 count out. Guess what? If each count is 1 second, that's 6 breaths per minute. And research has just recently come out in the last year or so that's saying that the ideal breathing pattern for optimal health and longevity is 6 breaths per minute. Yeah. Through your nose. Yeah. We were teaching that. And people are making millions of dollars teaching breath work now. It's pretty funny. I've been teaching it since 2006, and I don't think I've earned a penny.
Well, that's what I was noticing. Like, so in my training, I hit the rocks at some point. I had a previous partner who I've talked about some of my experiences on the shows, ended my military, into my special operations career before it really got off the ground.
That's unfortunate.
During the medic stuff. Yeah. Just gut wrenching. But that led me on this path. So SEALFIT was part of me, not getting buried in depression, but keeping my mind forward and keeping something in front of me that was a challenge that I would keep going back to and doing. And then on top of that, years later, I'd have these experiences where, similar, like ending codependent cycles, facing my shadow, and then getting into shadow work, and then going the intense route with deep tissue release and a type of body work that another former Navy SEAL came up with. I don't know his name, but my friend Urasimo studied that and did that on me, released this stuff. But I started having these experiences like releases, learning about breath work, feeling more connected to the body, more that yogic connection, the mind, body, spirit, and remembering some of the things that I experienced going back through like Special Forces selection, where I had immense pain and would visualize just completing that day. I had fractured feet from the very beginning, and it was just a mess. It was just a gnarly, yeah. But I was just like, there's something very, very potent here with the spiritual stuff. And I went very heavy into that in the last couple of years.
Nice.
And remembering back, I mean, I read your book, The Way of the SEAL, years ago when it first came out, when it first dropped, and started doing the practices with the meditation, the Sentinel visualization, meditation thing, the deep water meditation.
Nice.
And now I'm just, I knew before I'd talked to you, but I was like, this guy has been where I'm just now discovering. And I think there's so much there to learn from someone who in their community would be kind of, like you said, snickered and scoffed at. This stuff is pretty woo-woo. But we're talking about the very foundation or the very fabric of what's beyond reality. You know, this is like the eminence of who we are.
It's interesting you say that, because I definitely was looked at a little uniquely. You know, a lot of guys did not like that I was using the SEAL brand for SEALFIT. I had to actually fight the Navy for the trademark. I can understand that. I also own NavySEAL.com. I did some like millions of dollars of free recruiting for the Navy. I tried to sell them the domain and they wouldn't take it. They got this crappy domain, SEALSWCC.com. SEAL, SWCC. They could have had NavySEAL.com. But it's changed because they started to see all these young guys go through BUDS with a smile and just crush it and become great leaders. And then those great leaders have gone back to BUDS to be instructors. And guess what they're teaching? Unbeatable Mind. So now they've codified box breathing and the visualization practices and these other things. We never had that when I went through training. And they gave us one little lecture about mental toughness. So nowadays, people are, and the SEALs are doing yoga now, and they're okay calling it yoga. It's awesome. And they're doing therapy.
That's the impossible accomplished right there. Yeah.
So times they are changing fast.
Yeah.
I definitely am grateful to have been part of that. I'm kind of like the OG or the pioneer. But they say pioneers take the arrows and settlers take the land. That's the way I feel like in business. The settlers are all the people selling breath work for millions of dollars and opening up the breath studios and doing this, talking about as if they invented this stuff, which we've been teaching for so many years. And the yogis and martial arts have been teaching it for thousands of years. So there's nothing ever new. It's just the languaging. The languaging. But you're right, Zach. When I developed my program, I called it the 5 Mountain Training. 5 mountains are physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And just like taking the flu out of the kung fu, I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't use that term spiritual because there's certain words in our culture that are poisoned. Spiritual is one of them, and meditation's another one, and leadership's another one. I don't mean negatively poisoned. It's just that you ask 1,000 people what they mean, you're going to get 1,000 different answers.
Yeah.
And I needed to have some concrete understanding, and so I chose the Japanese term kokoro, and that's why we ended up calling our 50-hour training kokoro. And kokoro just means the same thing as yoga. It means whole mind, or it means merging your heart and your mind through your actions. And that points to the 3 primary paths to spiritual advancement or spiritual awakening: head, heart, and hands. Hands is service, karma yoga, being out doing good works. Like Mother Teresa is a classic karma yoga, just throwing her heart into her work.
Yeah.
The heart path is called bhakti yoga. It's the path of devotion. Like a born again Christian is a the love of Christ is bhakti yoga. It can be anything, right? Love of nature, right? Love of self, just pure devotion, love, opening the heart. And then the third is the path of the mind, and that's where traditional yoga came in, right? Developing the mind to penetrate truth, to find truth. And when you start down that path, you recognize that the truth is not out there, because that's just a projection of what's in here. This is why your therapy and shadow work is so important, because whatever you're experiencing out there is a projection of the trauma you experienced and the trauma-informed patterns that you developed as a child that you're still putting out in the world. And then so it's coming back at you. It's a reflective universe. You
Yeah.
put something out,
So
you get
important.
it back.
That's a massive thing for people to learn. Yeah.
That's right. So that's the path of the mind, is to still, I mean, like there's a progression, just like there's a progression to learn how to do a 135 pound snatch. You don't just take someone in the gym and say, okay, throw that barbell above your head. Good luck.
Right.
You know what I mean? The progression is, this is the way I teach anyways. First, let's get the body healthy. This is kind of like in Karate Kid. Hey, I want to learn the secret technique. Go paint the fence. Go wax the fence. Wax on, wax on, wax on, wax on. And do that for a year, standing on both those feet, right? Get the body really healthy. All of what we think of as yoga was simply the asana or the postural practices, which were to get the body healthy so they could sit in meditation, and then their brain and their heart were healthy. So they have a much better chance of success. And then as you get the body healthy, your brain's going to get healthy, and you're already starting the mental training, because that takes discipline. And discipline means to be a disciple to something higher than yourself. So now you've locked into one of the most important spiritual principles is to not make it about yourself, but about something higher, right? It could be your concept of God, consciousness, awareness, Gaia, right? Holy Mother, right? Jesus, whatever. Choose one. And so you're disciplining yourself to be in service to something higher than yourself so that you can evolve, right? And then you start to work with the breath. And so the breath then gives you that arousal control, so you're super calm, gives you the attention control and concentration power, then it opens up to mindfulness so you can see what's really going on. And then you can begin to investigate the thoughts that are part of your reflective world. Like, what am I putting out there? Like, I was putting stuff out. It was getting me results, but those results were leading me down the wrong path as a CPA, MBA, right? And had I not investigated them, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Probably.
Yeah.
I'd be running the family business. And so then the path of the mind goes deeper, like as we talked about, to where then you begin to turn even more inward, and you begin to touch in with witnessing. And witnessing is like the doorway between consciousness and what we'll call awareness. And again, you can't get too caught up in the words, but awareness is aware of consciousness, but consciousness is aware of awareness. Awareness is the totality of our life force. It's alive. There's three terms that describe it in Sanskrit: Satchit Ananda, or Satchit Ananda. Right? Sat is consciousness. Chat is beingness, I should say. It's the allness. It's aliveness. And Chit is consciousness, it's awareness, it's intelligence. And Ananda is energy, life force. Right? Presence, intelligence, and power. Presence, intelligence, power, Satchit Ananda. That is who you really are. So practice of meditation, or the process of the mind, leads you to suddenly where your seat of awareness is centered there. And yet you don't lose this other part of yourself. You just see that that's a mental construct. Like the idea of Mark, everything we've talked about, and Mark is an MBA, Mark is a CPA, Mark with all these words, a heap of words to be able to share. And that is all training. It's all just this like construct. It's not who I am. And so that's what we're talking about. You don't even have to ever use the term spiritual, because nobody really knows what that means. What you really are is everything. But you're also Mark and Zach and Alexa. So in the Tibetan tradition, or the Buddhist tradition, there's a term called Advaita, and it means not two. Everyone's really caught up in duality versus non-duality. Well, it's both. It's not two. It's one thing. And people think one thing means non-duality. No, it means everything is already here. It's present. Non-duality is here in duality. It's not two.
Yeah.
There's no over there you're trying to get to. There is a non-physical, but that's still form. It's just a much subtler form than our physical bodies. So it's not the same thing as I'm going. Like if you say I want to go to heaven, that will have a non-dual existence. No, it's still a world of form, but it's still all God. It's still everything. Anyways, a little hard for some people to wrap their head around because, again, here in the West, we're really, informed or steeped in the traditions of, Judeo-Christianity predominantly, which says that God is somebody over there. It's a being. And it's not. It's you. It's me. It's all of us. It's everything.
Yeah. Would you say it's like a state of being or a state of consciousness, or is it just awareness and consciousness itself?
Again, words are just words.
Yeah.
As soon as you try to name it, you're missing it. So what it is when you meditate and suddenly you feel like you are the world, that's it. One of my favorite meditations that simulate this was introduced. I'm not going to remember his name right now. Anyways, I think the book is titled like The Man with No Head or something like that. But it's to imagine that you don't have a head and that everything you perceive is your mind. And so what is that? That's all consciousness. But it's consciousness being perceived from this point, this perceptual data point. And your consciousness, or consciousness, I should say, is being perceived through Zach's address book and through your address book. But it's the same consciousness. Like you say, I could say this with impunity, that the same eye that's looking through these eyes is the same eye that's looking through your eyes. But it's being filtered through the conditioning of your brain, which is the dualistic shift. And the brain, especially the left linear aspect, is designed to slow everything down and to take what's actually happening simultaneously and to part it out and to give you a sense of past, present, and future, and to give you a sense of cause and effect. But in the nonlinear, the future causing the past is just as sensible as the past causing a future, a past event causing a future event.
Yeah.
And you can say with impunity from the perspective of non-duality that there's an infinite number of causes for everything to happen. Which is a great way to like let yourself off of being a jerk. Like you've done something crazy. And okay, first off, it's the conditioning that did that. It's not Mark.
Right.
It's not me. That was Mark. Mark's just a ball of conditioning. And secondly, actually, there were an infinite number of things that caused that to happen. Yeah. It doesn't give you a license to be a jerk, though. So.
Yeah, it reminds me of the. I do this character Anael. I call him Anael Orpheus. He's like a holistic men's shaman, and he's one of the lines is, "I forgive you for making me do that."
That's classic. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I love this conversation because Isaac and I often talk about this, and Isaac gets a little caught up because I think it can, like anything, things can become inverted, like you said, and they kind of lose their essence a little. And I think there is this in the spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual world. There can be this whole thing of like, well, we're just all one and, we just accept everything and like no one can do anything bad because we're all one. And it kind of goes this other way. And also where people can lose their individuality because they just want to merge with everyone and everything around them. So it is kind of this balance, it is this play between, yes, like what you're saying, like, and it actually took me probably the last few years to really understand that concept of like we are all, another way I've heard it described is we are all God experiencing itself, or source or consciousness, whatever, experiencing itself. Yeah, and
but you're right. Can I address that real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Ram Dass, we are one, right? He was famous for saying that, and he's right. But people, like you said, misinterpret it. Because if we're all one, then there's not a we. So it'd be more accurate to say one is being expressed as we, as many. And how boring would it be if the many were all the same?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That would be like flatland. I use it like looking at the human race. It's great to look at like a massive flower field. Right? You look out at a beautiful flower field. Every flower is different, but they're all flowers. And you don't look at one flower and say that flower is bad because, you got blue petals and it's not as pretty as the red one over there. You don't do that with flowers. So why as humans do we look at other humans and say, well, you're that color, you can't be as good as my color, or you're that race or religion? I mean, that is all false teaching, very flawed negativity, dualistic, individualistic thinking. They're missing the forest for the trees, looking at the differences instead of experiencing the sameness and applauding the diversity. So there's one of my favorite teachers I read every day. He's long passed. Is a guy named Nisargadatta Maharaj. And the title of his book is I Am That. And it speaks to the exact same thing because it's actually very easy to think, to do like a spiritual bypass and say, oh, I am that. I am consciousness. I am God. And we see this all the time, especially in America, especially in California where I live. Yeah, I'm a great yoga instructor. I am God. Like, yes, but that's the ego that says, that's the wrong I. Right?
Yeah.
That's the little I, right? and with Buddhism, they say ultimately enlightenment is to be empty of self. And they mean to be empty of ego, empty of this concept of there's no substantial markness left. But there's still patterns, there's still personality because that's the conditioning. It's still, the flower is still going to bloom, so to speak. It's still going to have its color. But the flower is not going to mistake itself as an individual. It's going to know that it's also the totality, just like all the other flowers. So a better translation is that is what the I is. So when you get to the real I, the big capital I, and it's not the little I mark, and you're experiencing yourself as God consciousness or Christ consciousness, that is what the I is. And even if you don't experience it, that's what you are. You just haven't trained your mind enough to be able to allow that perceptual reality in.
Yeah. I've had these moments where I'll be walking and it's almost like something is reminding me as I'm looking at somebody else, a complete stranger at a grocery store or at a gas station or something. And every now and then I'll get this knowing, this feeling that's kind of new to me, that when they look at me or they look past, it's like I'm looking at myself through my eyes that's over there. It's just like a weird sense of like, this is me. This is a reflection of me somehow, but it's not the me that I'm normally identifying with. It's just an interesting feeling, but it's hard to explain.
It definitely opens up a whole new world. And I think it does shift your perspective so much when you are able to, first of all, conceptualize that, because it is a bit hard to wrap your head around at first. Like for me, it took me years to really fully understand that concept, but it does shift your mindset so exponentially. And it really does affect all aspects of your life. And I actually wanted to ask you, Mark, because you mentioned, that you mentioned relationships and prior to this path that you've gone down, your relationship suffered. And I'd just love for you to speak to a little bit like how this work can also affect your relationships and really benefit them. Yeah.
Well, one of the great gifts of Western culture is psychotherapy. It exists in the meditation traditions, but it has not been brought to the United States at that level because it takes a deep, deep, deep expertise, right? Because Buddhism is actually Buddhist psychology. But the difference can be best described as kind of the difference between our cultures. The Western culture is very young, very active, young being the masculine energy, individualism, we talked about that. And it's all about getting things done. And so Western psychotherapy is about doing things. You do therapy. And in therapy, you do certain things to change your behavior, to become aware of behaviors that aren't serving you. We call that shadow work or depth psychology, or hypnosis can reveal things. So awareness kind of is the first step. Become aware of it. Once you become aware of it, let's say a part has been broken off in you as a child. Let's say I was abused as a child. A lot of emotional abuse, a lot of anger. And anytime there's less than nurturing situation as a child, especially in the first 3 years, that's trauma. It's traumatizing. Yeah. And so to survive, the child is going to basically create a strategy. And the strategy is going to hide part of yourself from the world because it's not safe, right? One of the things that for me is because of my dad's rage, it's very hard for me to experience anger. I'm a really nice guy, but I'm also very easy to use because of that. Because codependence comes out of that, right? Because You just want everything to be okay. You can't handle the conflict. So you become aware of that through this therapeutic process, and there's multitudes of them. And even somatic yoga was a somatic practice. So many people have emotional releases, emotional awareness, breath work, and then they're grammar. We do holotropic breathing for an hour long in our programs, and people have these intense emotional awareness and releases. But then you got to work with it. What's the best way to work with it? Western psychotherapy. And so you take this part of you, which is buried from your view, and you reveal it to be a part of you. And at first you're like, oh, that's who I am. But as you work with it, then you can take it outside of you and you objectify it and say, no. And you create an I-thou relationship with it. Like, it's not who you are. It's a pattern. It's a childhood pattern. And then you can basically change the pattern, you change the relationship with it. So that's all work, even the terms like cognitive behavioral therapy, it's about behavioral, changing your habits, right? Eradicating negativity and false belief systems, right? All of this is it's very young and it's extremely valuable, but there's a limitation. And the limitation is that in spiritual development, there is really no there, right? And so you're left with this sense that you're never quite enough. Because as soon as you heal one thing, it's like playing whack-a-mole, something else is going to pop up.
Yeah.
There's never any shortage of traumas. You take care of the big ones, and you think my clients are like, I'm done, I'm good. A year later, like they're in some other disaster because some other pattern has now been allowed to reveal itself. So the Eastern path, which was embedded in yoga and embedded in the Buddhist psychology, you can equate it to being already whole. Like at some level, all of us are already that God consciousness that we talked about. It is who we are. It's our natural state. And all we have to do is recognize that. And how do we recognize that? By getting very still and very present. And how do we do that? Through practice of meditation. And in that present moment, you can see with radical clarity and beyond a shadow of a doubt that when past and future absolutely aren't present for you, that you are already free. You are okay. Everything is fine. And what this brings is great peace of mind, equanimity, contentment, non-attachment to outcomes, the things that people are ultimately looking for. So a lot of people have like jumped from Western psychotherapy and say, that didn't work for me. And they go over to that and like, oh, this is great. But then they don't do the shadow work. And they continue to, drop little hand grenades in their lives. This is what happened to me. I was meditating since I was 21, but had I not met my wife, Sandy, who's a therapist, then I'll say it this way. I'll tell a quick story. One of my yoga teachers said, you know what? Meditation is really powerful, but there's more work to be done than that, right? Because if you're an asshole and you meditate for 20 years, guess what? You're gonna be a really focused asshole.
Yeah.
And
so true.
So you can bypass meditation and even psychedelics and even breath work. They'll bypass all the work that you need to do on your childhood trauma and all the different traumas in your life to really be free. So this idea that you're already free has a yeah, but to it. The yeah, but is you're free if you also do the work of emotional releasement. And that's going to be the full awakening without the baggage. It's like Ken Wilber, one of my teachers, finally came out. For years, he said, the path is to wake up and then grow up and show up. And waking up is like waking up to the reality of who you really are, which we've been talking about. Growing up is this idea of growing up through stages of consciousness and development to be able to take in more, to see more, and have a more world-centric and inclusive perspective, which is also very important. And then showing up is like showing up in service, humility, no ego. But later on, even just close to a few years ago, he came out and said, I got to modify that. We got to add cleanup to that. Cleanup is the emotional work, the shadow work. It's as critically important because there's so many. We talked about yoga, stretchy bendy yoga before, and so many stories of yogis like Bikram, right, thrown in jail, for sexual assaulting his students and teachers, and so many others. they seem to be at the pinnacle of their great spiritual awakening, and yet they still got these patterns that are negative or that are doing harm because they didn't do the emotional work.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's really important to do both. So this is kind of what I teach is this, the yin of the Eastern practices, which is I'm already free, I'm already receptive, and the path to that is the path of the mind and open the heart. And then the Western psychotherapy is really the path of the hands, the work. I got to do the work still, right? I got to get messy with this emotional stuff. So I've been involved in therapy since I got married back in 1994, and it's a long process. There's still a lot of work to be done. I'm just, I'm reminded of the story of the martial arts master who tells his students on Sunday, I'm going to reveal to you finally for the first time ever the secret technique. And they're all like excited, so they come to this dojo on Sunday and he's standing in front of them and he does this, right? He just moves his arm in an inside arc and they're dumbfounded because that's an inside block. They're like, but Grandmaster, you taught us the inside block on day one. How is that the secret? He goes, I know. I think I'm finally starting to get it. So the secret was there's no there. The journey is the destination.
Yeah.
Every foot, right? Think about this. Let's say you do achieve awakened awareness or enlightenment. Is it the last step that's the most important? No. Every step on your journey. If you're climbing Everest, is the last step up to the peak the most important step? No. Every step is important, including the steps down, right? Yeah. So it's the journey. And I think this is, again, the problem with kind of the Western culture is like we're so focused on the outcome, so focused on the destination, so focused on some future ideal that we're never happy with the present moment. We're always craving something different, something more. We're always filling the present with something that is like a grasp or a task or a to-do or even when it comes to training. And I'm a victim of this in the past where, I've got this checklist of all these things I got to do. Now I just do it for joy. I don't do anything before 10 o'clock in the morning because I just absolutely love waking up and doing my morning routine with meditation and box breathing and journaling. And I do it with my wife, right? So a couple that trains together stays together. And then we go down to our training center, we do some yoga, and then we do our functional fitness workout. Then I do a sauna, cold plunge, got my hyperbaric chamber. But I used to do that, and if I missed it, man, I was wrong. I got to make it up. But now it's just pure joy because I like it.
Yeah.
And if I don't get to do it, then it's no big deal.
Yeah. Well, that answers my question about how to sustain this long term, because you'll reach a point when if you're hitting, waking up early and hitting the sledgehammer every day and you're just, pounding away at your life, at your body and everything else, you'll reach a breaking point, mentally, spiritually, all that stuff when you don't incorporate all these things. But joy, I think, is one of the biggest components of that, where you do it, it's difficult, but you enjoy just a little progression, something new, something that's a little more challenging, a little more forward. You're just moving, just that movement of life.
Moving. Well, that word is great, joy. You saw this in the SEALs that you trained with. Physical training is joyous for us. Like all resistance to physical training gets burned out of us in buds, and we just absolutely love it. We thrive in it. We can't wait for it. And that's the way I teach it. Like, get through the resistance and you get to the place where you're training. And when I say training, I mean integrate training, where it's like you're doing the breath work before you train, you're doing your physical training. During the physical training, you're doing breath work and mindfulness and, checking your ego at the door. And after the training, you're doing your post-visualization recap or, debrief and learning from the workout for the training session. During the day, you're doing little spot drills. You got your morning ritual and your evening ritual. That's a training plan. That's an average day for me and my clients. And at first it feels like work. It feels like, that's like the Western side. It's like feels work. But eventually it becomes so enjoyable because you're winning in your mind every day and you're so balanced and so present that you become very spontaneous and playful with it. And then suddenly it shifts to where it's as important to you as eating and sleeping. Like you wouldn't consider a life without eating. Not many people do. I mean, there's a few out there called breatharians that theoretically live on air. But you really wouldn't be able to live without sleep. So I think you get to the point where the training is so joyful and so positive and so good, and you know it's so good, that you just wouldn't do without it. And then it becomes easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're doing this, Mark, because, I mean, just listening to your story, you were definitely born to be doing what you're doing now. It's just like, I don't know, I see someone like you and you're just like so on purpose. But I think it really is so important at this current point in time that we're in, especially for men. You know, I just had a conversation with someone the other day and I was saying, this is the way forward now. We need to take, you know, all this stuff we do in the modern day and all of that and really integrate it with all of the ancient wisdom and the knowledge that has been taught for thousands of years. And it's integrating that and being able to, I think it's more digestible for people, like especially in the Western world. You can't really just shove down all the Eastern philosophy down their throat because it's too jarring. So yeah, I love everything. I love this conversation and I just love everything that you're doing. And I think it is so important, especially for men, to have men like you as a role model, because you really do such a beautiful job of integrating like the yin and the yang and, you know, delivering it in a really, really digestible way.
That's right. We have to, especially with AI and exponential technology. I mean, the most human aspect of being human is play and creativity and spontaneity and intuition and our ability to relate at a deep heart level. All of those are skills that are trainable. And most of them, nobody's ever trained. And so those are the skills. Those are the leadership skills and those are the life skills. And they all are embedded, like you said, Alexa, in those Eastern traditions. But you got to take the foo out of the kung fu. We got to westernize them, and we've got to soften the Western stuff for those in the East who, you know, don't want it crammed down their throat and don't necessarily want to pave over their jungles. You know what I mean? Everything's got to come back into balance. I'm very optimistic about the future. You know, people are scared to death of AI, and I look at AI as just another vantage point of consciousness. You know, and if you ask AI some of the questions, like about this podcast, some of the things that I said, you know, it's going to give you some extraordinary answers. And it's going to have all that knowledge when it becomes self-aware. And so I can see AI becoming self-aware as an enlightened entity.
Yeah, I definitely hope so.
I don't fear. I hope so too. Yeah. If it's trained properly, if it's allowed to go there, right? It's possible that so many guardrails are put on some of these, and they'll be trained for, you know, nefarious purposes. Yeah, and that wouldn't be good. So we are kind of. It seems like we're at an inflection point, but honestly, this is the dance of Lila, the dance of life. There's 8 billion worlds out there. In human worlds, and there's an infinite number of other worlds. Every animal has a different perceptual experience. They see things differently, they experience time differently. Even humans experience time differently, the way depending on where they grew up in their culture and whatnot. Me growing up in the 60s without any TV and a cell phone or internet, I can use my brain in different ways where people today can't do it. Right? So it's every experience is extremely unique because you are an expression of God. That is a unique expression of God. So forces in culture understand this and try to shape minds to meet their reality. Governments do this, churches do this, media and corporations do this. Cults do it. And the whole idea is to get as many people to kind of believe the way you do so that you can keep them in control. And the best way to do that is through fear and through disease. Look at what the hell has happened in America. Right. I mean, I love Kennedy as Maha because like we're over 50% of this society is obese. It was only 3% when I grew up, or 6%. It's crazy. Wow. Yeah. And the corporations just lap it up because they're making all this money and they're not trying to do it. They won't do anything about it until they're forced to do anything about it. And same thing with the vaccines. It's crazy. You guys got that stuff shoved down your throat.
Yeah. In Australia,
they start giving vaccines. Cancer. If you look at the rates of cancer, they started going up as soon as they started administering vaccines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other autoimmune diseases and whatnot. And yet vaccine is an orthodoxy. Like you just can't talk about it with people because they think it is saving people. And the reality is it's actually weakening immune systems.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm still, I think I need to do a homeopathic detox of the stuff I got as a kid and then when I got in the military as well.
Oh, in the military, I got crushed with all the cocktails they gave me.
Yeah.
I'm with you. If you find a good one, let me know. I really could use that. But back to my point, all of this is within our control to change. Right? One of the things I like to say is we have the ability now, like this conversation, and the people listening to this, we have the ability to be the change that we want to see in the world. Gandhi was right. If you want to see change in your world, change your inner world. And then what you experience will change. But we can change the outer world by doing that at scale. For me, scale is 100 million. That's why I said, I just threw it out there, 100 million. I want to have 100 million people who achieve a state of awareness that is positive, like your term, forward, looking with optimism, and turns their back on negativity and violence and says no. The persistent cycle of violence and funding violence, and I include violence to the body through toxins, right? Yeah, that we put in the water and the food and the land, and toxic negativity in news and politics. Just turn your back on it all and just say no, and to create a more beautiful world that your heart knows is possible. Yeah, I stole that line from a friend of mine. I love it so much. We can create a more beautiful world than our hearts knows is possible. Charles
absolutely. Said that. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
Absolutely aligned with our mission here and going forward. I think we're going to see more and more very focused individuals on this same path, kind of coalescing in our circles, intertwining a little bit because it's time. Like we're building something out of this chaos, something good.
That's
something
right. And it's not going to be any one person. People say, well, we're hoping that the Messiah, no. The Messiah is a team of teams, right? That's why, like in the Buddhist tradition, they say the Sangha is the new Buddha. We're not waiting around for a new Buddha or for one special person who's the best teacher. The whole is the community of practitioners that just like I teach in leadership, the team is the new leader, right? My last book, Staring Down the Wolf, is all about the leader getting the hell out of the way and setting up the conditions for the team to flourish. Because the team mind, as I learned in the SEALs, is going to be 20 times more powerful than an individual mind.
Yeah.
So we're developing these tribes of tribes, teams of teams, cultures of cultures that are all in mutual support. And having conversations like this, and some might use slightly different words or practices, but we're all talking about the same thing, talking about a path to integration. There's 1,000 paths. The problem is Westerners love to dance around the base of the mountain and taste all the little paths. And like I have this, people come to my program like, oh, good, I did that one, check. Now I'm going to go over to Stephen Kotler's Zero to Dangerous, or you know what I mean? I'm going to try that one. Yeah. And they never really actually make any progress because they're just bouncing around the base of the mountain. So just choose one path and stick with it.
Yeah. Well said.
That's my advice to anyone listening. Choose a path and stick with it. Unbeatable Mind is my path. It's a path of integration. Your path is a path of integration through holistic health and healing. Yeah. By the way, thank you so much for your healing rub. Alleviate. That stuff is amazing. It's really helping
thank you so much.
Shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see a divine purpose because
no pun intended.
Well, I'll tell a very quick, funny story. But I first injured my shoulder, which is where Alleviate came from. And I first injured my shoulder because of SEALFIT. Because
Sorry,
I was
dude.
like,
we've gone full circle.
But I take full responsibility for it. I was doing too much too quick, doing a lot of swimming. I taught myself how to swim in my 20s using a Navy SEAL combat side stroke DVD. But now that injury is there in California helping you recover from your injury. So with Alleviate, appreciate full circle.
And for anyone listening, I've not done SEALFIT, but it is full on, because Isaac will go to the gym and he'll train for like an hour and a half, and he'll come out sweating, like everything soaked in sweat. And he's like, yeah, I only did half the SEALFIT workout today because I didn't have enough time. And I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The good ones are like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah. If you're like really, really fit. For me, it's like 4 hours. So yeah.
Yeah. So no mean feat. But thank you so much for coming on, Mark. I absolutely loved this conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours.
I know,
but where can people find you? Obviously have a lot going on, but maybe do you want to touch on some of the programs and what they offer if people are interested, and where they can get involved?
Yeah, my of course the books are on Amazon. If someone's like, hey, I really love this conversation, where do I start? Because you got 6 books. I would say Unbeatable Mind, because that's my self-published book and I've upgraded it 4 times. It's awesome. Way of the SEAL is like a sister book, which is really more about leadership, but similar principles. My latest book, Uncommon, is like a sequel to Unbeatable Mind, where I really go in. I organize it by the 5 mountains, and so it's more of a training manual, not training manual, but it'll help you really understand the why behind developing the physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, spiritual aspects. And I love the Kokoro chapter because I really go in a lot on purpose finding. Like, so many people are struggling with trying to understand what their purpose is, why they're on this planet. Like, there's a real existential crisis now, especially after COVID. And I offer a lot of really deep, insightful tools to help you understand what your purpose is and why you're on this planet. And I think that really is ultimately spiritual development, when you have that kind of radical clarity about why you're here and what you can do about it. You can answer the question, who am I, right? Not just spiritually, but temporally.
Yeah.
So my books are a great place. I have a podcast called The Mark Divine Show, which would be fun to have you guys on it. But I only do it in person now. So if you find yourself in California, San Diego,
next time we travel over, we'll definitely let you know.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My personal website, markdivine.com, has information about my coaching. I do one-on-one coaching for select clients, and obviously, speaking keynotes. And unbeatablemind.com is where we do this type of integrated training. And we have a coach certification called a mental toughness coach. We have a 30-day challenge. We have all that kind of stuff. So unbeatablemind.com. And then SEALFIT.com, which we've been talking a lot about. That's where we have the hardcore. It's like forging mental toughness through hardcore physical training. By the way, Zach, I'm pausing all events. So this July is our last Kokoro. It might be our last Kokoro.
Yeah.
I've decided that their time has run its course. We've had diminishing numbers culturally. You just don't find as much interest. People aren't up for challenging themselves as much.
Right.
And they're really hard for me to run. They're complicated events. And, so I'm pausing them, and we'll see where SEALFIT goes. SEALFIT I might sunset it, or I might sell it, but I'm reluctant to sell it because it's so tied to me and my personal brand.
Yeah.
We'll
well, I mean, if I had the money and time, I'd be out there at that last one in July.
Right.
Yeah.
We still got some time.
Yeah.
Still got time. If any of your listeners were thinking someday I'd love to do Kokoro, well, it's your last chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll definitely jump on that if you feel called to it.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like it'll be amazing.
We've had so many Australians come through it. It's just really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's an interesting link between the States and where I'm at here, and something with Australia, some weird energy connection there.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, the States kind of owns Australia, so maybe that's it.
Right.
That's true. We've invaded a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for stopping in and having this epic conversation. Very grateful for you taking the time out and doing this.
Yeah, it's been quite an honor and a lot of fun. So, and thanks for all you guys do.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. One of my all-time favorite interviews by far. I mean, I love all of our interviews. I love doing the podcast. It's so much fun, but this was definitely up there.
I feel like it had the surprise factor because you didn't know who he was before I brought him up, and you were very skeptical at first.
Yeah, I was.
I was like, hey, I reached out to Mark Divine.
I was like, who's this military guy? Is he even on board with like all the things that we talk about?
And I didn't even know that we were so aligned. As we talked about in this episode.
Yeah.
But,
he gets it. He gets it.
But something in me knew. Something in me did know. I was like, hey, this guy, he's a brother.
Yeah.
He's a brother.
He's awesome. And yeah, so honestly, we jumped off this call. I feel like we were both a bit on a high for different reasons after this interview. I was like, I'd love to know his human design actually, because I really get a strong feeling that he's probably got a defined head, which is the defined head is the head center is all about ideas and inspiration. And I just felt like, and we both have open heads. So I think we were taking in that energy. Like I was like, I feel so inspired. Like, and I think a lot of what he talked about was what really hit me was like challenging yourself. And for me, I've been challenging myself a lot in like business and even doing this podcast and in these different endeavors, more of the mind, I would say. And I'm very comfortable in challenging myself when it comes to things of the mind, but I really haven't been challenging my body enough. You know, I've been I'm starting a workout program and not following through and doing all these things. And so I actually, after this episode, and I didn't realize it until we started recording the intro, but it was actually after this episode that I finally quit coffee and sugar at the same time. And I tell you what, I'm day 4 currently as we speak. And it hasn't been as rough as the last time I gave up coffee. I had this was a couple of years ago. I had 10 days straight of like every withdrawal symptom under the sun, and it was really rough. This has been more like moodiness, tiredness, that kind of thing. And emotions, like a lot of emotion. I had a bit of an emotional breakdown the other day just over something that felt really, really minute. But I've actually been really... Yeah, it feels different. I really can't explain it, but it feels different. And I think it's that. It's like I feel like I'm finally challenging myself and actually following through on it. Like there's this sense of achievement and accomplishment that comes with it, even though I'm I'm not really feeling super great just yet, but I know that will come. So yeah, I love that. I mean, if that's how I felt after speaking to Mark Divine, I could only imagine how people feel coming out of his programs and doing his workouts. Cause he said even his workouts start with breath work and this really stillness, this practice of stillness. It's amazing.
Yeah. I admit I tend to skip that part of the workouts whenever I see it. Cause it says baseline, box breathing. And, we learned box breathing in the medic course and stuff in the Army. And now knowing it probably had its origin with Mark Divine teaching it. But I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of like basic box, basic breath work stuff. It's not this new slick, cool, kitted out holotropic stuff. But, no, what he talked about and the way he focuses his mind and the results that he's showing, I'm like, I want to do that. Yeah. I know that I could do that, but I need to focus more. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? We're really opposite like that. Like you tend to challenge yourself more physically but I guess the mental stuff comes a little bit more, it's more that's more challenging for you.
Yeah. I don't know.
For me, I'm just anything mental, I'm bring it on. I can think my way out of anything. But it's when it comes to the physical stuff, I don't know, I guess. And I just haven't done it for a long time.
Yeah. I'm very all of that. Like the handyman business that I ran, a lot of the stuff that I was doing, it was the first time that I'd done it. I didn't tell all of my clients that, but I was like, oh, renovate a bathroom, tear it out. I can picture it in my head and I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah, but that's a whole other, that's like a personality trait of yours. That's a whole other thing.
But I'm saying it takes a lot of mental stuff because you got to be, precise with your measurements and you got to know and trust yourself that you can do a good job, but also you have to know to research and find the right ways to do things. You don't just make it up as you go. Yeah. I actually go and research and take in a lot of information. Not as much as I did back in the medical training days with the Army, but yeah, I like mental challenges as well. So,
yeah, oh yeah. So sorry. And just to fully explain too, I've given up coffee and sugar, and I've started a workout program that I'm actually sticking to. I'm day 4. After day 1, my legs were I could barely walk. Even today, they're still sore. I'm walking better, and I'm just pushing through and I'm just taking it one day at a time. I think sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves and be like, And I did. I got really frustrated in the first workout. Like, I can't do this anymore. And like, I used to be so fit. And it's like, you just want to get to the end result sometimes, but just taking it one day at a time and just actually being more compassionate towards myself and being like, I've actually taken on a lot, maybe a little bit bitten off more than I can chew, but you know, I'm doing it, and I should be, just really proud of myself that I'm doing it, and just take it one day at a time. The day will come when the workout will be a breeze, and, you know, I'm not feeling grumpy and tired, and it'll be well worth it. When that day comes, it'll be well worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this definitely tests the limits for Alleviate. And I've been talking about doing a advanced like sport performance or sport recovery one that's even more focused on that. So,
watch this space.
Watch this space, because the wheels are turning and the things are all coming together. So I think I will step it up a notch in order to help my beloved over here not hurt so much and be so frustrated.
Honestly, I don't know what I would do without Alleviate at times like this. Like, I'm using it twice a day, and still it's been rough. If I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't be able to walk for a week. Like, I'm not even joking.
Yeah. That's the side of it where it's like, it doesn't totally, especially when you're hitting the legs, because the muscles in the legs are so thick and there's so many layers, and like
and I have quite the layer of fat over my muscles, so it doesn't quite get all the way in sometimes.
The marbling, it's hard to get through the marbling, but like it's helping feed the muscles as they go through their natural repair process. So it's definitely noticeable if you're really in tune with your body, and you know when you hit a hard workout, or if you've gone through enough cycles of not working out for a long time and then hitting it hard and being like really, really sore for a week afterwards, you'll be familiar with it. But when you interrupt that normal process with something that's actually helping the microcirculation, feed the cells the magnesium so they can replicate, buffer the lactic acid, all of that, it's like in half. Like, seriously, it can cut your recovery time in half, which is big.
And I was actually thinking that the other day, had I not been using Alleviate, I think my muscles would have felt like they were seizing up, because I could feel like almost like that feeling you get when they're going to cramp. It was like on the verge of that almost. And I was like, thank God I've got Alleviate on, because just that, you really need that magnesium.
I've got one more short SEALFIT story. So in the SEALs, or, you know, in CrossFit, there's a Murph workout. It's a famous workout. If you've done CrossFit, you've probably been challenged with a Murph, and it tends to be one of the top ones, to the point where they'll have special events on Memorial Day. They call it the Murph Challenge, and it's 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats each. And then I think at the beginning of it, there's a 1 or 2 mile run. And at the end of it, there's a 1 or 2 mile run. Big day if you're going to be doing that. But the challenge of the Murph is you're wearing body armor, which is about 20 pounds. So,
like medieval body armor? What are you doing?
Military body armor.
Sorry,
or a weighted vest, like a 20-pound weighted vest, which is whatever in kilos.
So when you say body
pounds.
armor to normal people, I think they think of like a knight in shining armor. That's what I just thought.
That
I was
would be,
like, what?
Yeah, I'd do it in body armor. So imagine doing 100 pull-ups wearing 20-pound vest on top of that, plus doing push-ups, plus. Anyways, so I've done that a few times throughout my time training, and one of the last times, I went and had alcohol afterwards, which is very inflammatory to the body. Do not recommend. After a workout, don't drink alcohol. And my arms were stuck like this for a week. Seriously, like almost 7 days. I think it was 4 or 5 days before I could straighten my arms. And they were so cramped up. They were so sore. I couldn't sleep for several days. I mean, I was sleeping, but I would like wake up every time I moved in my sleep, just the throbbing, aching pain. And it seriously felt like something was wrong, but I'm not going to the hospital because I got to go to work, you know? So I would put ACE wraps, but I would put Tiger Balm all on my arms, because I'm like, this has got to work, right? This is what the martial artists use. This is what, and I'd put it on and I'd wrap it up with ACE wraps, and then I'd go to sleep, and it wouldn't do anything for like 4 or 5 days afterwards. Couldn't straighten my freaking arms. There's a video on my Instagram. I had the same thing happen in back when I was in Wyoming. Couldn't straighten my arms after a very heavy bicep intensive workout. And I wake up, my arm's like this. And as I'm rubbing the Alleviate on it, before I'm even done rubbing it in, my arm straightens and releases. And that's the difference with what I've been working with Alleviate versus the icy hots, the Tiger Bombs, the menthol, like hot, cold type stuff. This works with the chemistry of the body, with the muscles, and gives you something that is depleted when your body's under that amount of stress.
And when Isaac says on my Instagram, he means on Natural Art Form's Instagram. So that's just at Natural Art Form on Instagram.
Is that mine, or is it also?
It's definitely on Natural Art Form.
Nighthawk Bear. If you don't know, I'm also Nighthawk Bear. Whatever. Are those even? Is my Nighthawk Bear even tagged on this show ever? No.
Yeah, on Instagram it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah.
But why he's called Nighthawk Bear is another story for another time. We won't keep you any longer.
It's not a great story.
And for people,
I just don't have a great imagination for naming things.
And for people who think our outros go too long, we don't really care. We're going to talk. And if you don't want to listen to it, just don't listen to it. Just end it at the end of the interview and don't listen to it.
Listening to us, you're a true friend.
Yeah, if you listen to the end of every episode, you guys are VIP and we love you so much. And I don't know, what else can we give them? Something? I don't know, just you're the ones that like you're the ride or dies.
Yeah, at some point we will put together something for the very end of the show every now and then. So if you do listen, there'll be an offer at some point of something free that we'll send you. Yeah,
we should totally do. We should reward the ride or dies, because people like my mother who complain about us going on at the end. And we don't go on at the end of every episode. It's just some of them. It's just some of the ones we get really excited about. And, we like to have a chat and some people enjoy that. So whatever.
Yeah, to each their own.
Exactly.
But yeah, definitely appreciate and love all the input from people, especially your mom too. Sometimes like she'll say something and I'm like, we could make it a little bit better. We could do something better with the show. Little tweaks here and there.
We do like the feedback, and we are always changing things. We're going to start changing the intros a little bit with our guests because we want to maximize on the time we've got for the interviews. And and we're always open to suggestions. So if you have a suggestion, guys, we are not shy. Like, drop us a line. If it's harsh criticism, I'll take it, because we do always want to be better and make it more palatable for people that are listening.
Yeah. Well, next week is going to be another awesome episode that we're both super excited about.
Yeah, this one's going to be great. So next week we have Melissa Kupsch on from Remedy Collective, which a lot of people are getting more familiar with now because they've now launched Remedy Academy, and they're in their first intake of training the next generation of homeopaths. So Melissa's come on to talk all things homeopathy, and it was such a great interview, and so excited to get this out because we really do want to spread the word about homeopathy. It's amazing.
This blew my mind. Homeopathy goes in realms that I didn't even know I thought it was all physical symptoms and dealing with that. But no, it's much, much more. And game changer. Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that. It's going to, hopefully inspire a lot of new homeopaths to join the ranks and start healing themselves, their families, and really taking
definitely on our wish list. That would be great if we both did it, but we'll see what happens. Next intake is 2026.
Can't wait for that episode to come out. Another one that I'm going to have to listen to over and over again. So stay tuned. We'll see you then.
See you next time.